The American Dream, Waking Up, Chapter 9, our final chapter, Waking Up. While it is probably safe to say that when individuals and societies lose sight of something greater than themselves, whatever they call it, the Great Spirit, cosmic consciousness, God for some, the Almighty, the Supreme, or any other number of labels representing an omnipresent consciousness, those individuals and societies are considerably weakened from a moral and ethical standpoint. In the extreme case of this self-centered state, it is basically every man, woman, and child for themselves. When the end is self-fulfillment exclusively, the means, which can often become extremely perverted, are fully justified. Of course, we are speaking of a matter of degree, inasmuch as each one of us have a responsibility to take care of our physical, mental, and emotional bodies by more or less exercising common sense health practices, intellectual development, and emotional control. However, when the ultimate goal of life becomes the fulfillment of just these bodies exclusively, the results can lead to all manner of corrupt behavior, not the least of which is the love of money. This love of money has been responsible for a vast majority of individual and societal problems. When the individual and the society at large creates the notion that money, material achievement, and other forms of self-fulfillment are the ultimate goals of life, an insidious process of decay commences for the individual as well as the society. Taken to the extreme, the pursuit of purely material goals and self-fulfillment leads inevitably to the various crimes of selfishness: stealing, cheating, lying, raping, sexual harassment, compulsive gambling, and on and on and on. The pursuit of this lifestyle inevitably hurts others and oneself, simply to satisfy the ultimate goal of self-fulfillment. When individuals and societies are more concerned not only about how they, but others as well, are faring materially and financially than how they are doing morally, ethically, the priorities for the development of healthy individuals and societies are turned upside down, which ultimately results in chaos. Each one of us can help by being an example, by being willing to look within ourselves and rooting out those problem areas that keep each of us bound by illusions of our own making. And certainly there are many that can play very active roles as exemplars of a new understanding and compassion for all the others, as well as demonstrating by their actions that they have some other priorities in life than just purely superficial goals. The author is speaking here specifically of those in leadership positions who are claiming to put the people first, i.e., politicians, doctors, and the clergy. These professions are generally highly regarded within communities and nations, but unfortunately often for the wrong reasons. Each of these professions uniquely claim to be interested first and foremost in the welfare of others. In fact, they take oaths and vows, legally binding, to demonstrate this concern and commitment. However, presently, and remember this is 1993, it appears that to many in these professions they are far more interested in what they can get out of the people and not what they can give. Of course, there are many fine people in these professions, and probably most all begin their careers with very unselfish motives. Remember, we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. However, somewhere along the line, many choose to justify their hard work, and no one's denying that the pressures of these occupations are often overwhelming. Many, however, seem to be far more concerned with keeping up with their BMW payments and country club fees than on the people they serve. When asked for a solution to this obvious problem, with the many resultant vicious circles that surround it, outrageous health care costs, wasteful spending, and professional perks at taxpayers' expense, the solution is offered to these professions being paid much less for their service. These professions actually used to exist on free will offerings. The comeback generally is, then you just will not attract quality people. We should all think about this. It would seem that a quality person would be one who would want to serve others first and self second, and thus be among the most highly respected, but perhaps not the wealthiest. This is not to say that these individuals should not live comfortably. However, when doctors, politicians, and even clergy live like, quote, kings and queens, unquote, at basically the expense of the people, the whole system begins to fall apart. Then it is not surprising that many lose respect for these professions when the professionals themselves have lost respect for their unique calling. If by chance the national conscience could be raised above the apparent love of money and status, if those who have openly declared to be in the business of helping others, if they especially exemplified this new attitude, then this would clearly send the message that the ultimate goal in life is not exclusively material and financial gain. This would seem to be a healthy perspective, and there would still be those avenues open in the business world for those who cannot seem to live without the desire to amass personal fortunes. The love of money is particularly debilitating to young minds, as they are programmed early on that the goal of life is to make the most money. The means then often become irrelevant to this goal. Therefore, it should not be surprising when many, young and old, turn to any means to secure this elusive goal. A goal which unfortunately often ends in violence. Enter the drug connection. In the eyes of some, selling drugs is a quick way to achieve the American dream, instant self-fulfillment. In a way, who can blame many who choose this path when from childhood they've been programmed to believe that money and possessions bring happiness, status, and respect, the American illusion. Of course, many achieve these goals through legitimate means, but true happiness is still often not discovered. There are many in America, Christian and otherwise, that would concur with the above. Many feel that America is in crisis because of a lack of religious, spiritual, and moral values. The author concurs. However, unfortunately, many believe that the solution is to reinforce Christianity, especially among America's young. This brings us to another controversial subject, the issue of prayer in public schools. Considering that most public schools in America are a cross-section of racial and religious diversity, to be fair, it might take up half the morning just to finish praying. Therefore, it would seem wise to consider simply a moment of silent reflection where each student is free to follow their own conscience. The author feels, however, that all, and especially the young in America, could well benefit from an exposure to the various cultures and religions of the world. Thus, it would seem prudent to make a comparative religious and cultural diversity class mandatory in the school curriculum. In these times, when the world is becoming a much smaller place, so to speak, humans can ill afford to not be cognizant of their neighbors. It is only fear born of a lack of understanding of another's culture and religion that continues to produce many of the problems we see among young and old. Therefore, concerning the values and morals that society presents, while a strong case can be made for the necessity of ethical and religious spiritual values for the health of individuals and societies, it's also probably safe to say that when an individual or group, and especially a nation, attempts to establish a particular form of religion, spirituality, a god, if you will, to the exclusion of all other spiritual religious expressions, the results are often as debilitating as the effects of no religious spiritual values. And in America, people should really think about when they use the word God. God bless America, taking vows on Bibles, for example. Would they say Shiva bless America? Brahman bless America? The Tao bless America? Throughout this book, we have become painfully aware of the results of attempting to establish religious dominance. And the recent events in the former Yugoslavia, remember this is 1993, demonstrate that this trend is still with us. During the 1400s, Muslim invaders overwhelmed the Orthodox Christian Serbs establishing rule and religion. There was much bloodshed. When communism took command of the region, there could be no official religion and there was relative peace. Of course, life under communism was not very fulfilling, as free expression and a recognition of a higher power than the state was not the official position. Now, with the demise of communism, we once again see renewed religious zealotry in the attempt to establish Christianity as the official religion. So what is the solution to this apparent paradox? How do individuals and nations avoid establishing a particular religion while continuing to maintain a belief in a higher spiritual power? Concluding that it is in the pursuit of this power that the ultimate goal of life is reached, thereby putting the other goals, physical, mental, emotional, and societal, into perspective. If anything, history has taught us that reality can often be a relative thing. There is always someone with another view, another way of looking at life, especially concerning religion and the word God. Therefore, while there certainly are common sense ethics that, as we have seen, are more or less universal in all societies, regardless of religion or no religion, for any one group to proclaim absolute truth, especially religious spiritual truths, and thus absolute authority in all other areas of life, is to create an illusion, a dream based on a desire for supremacy. In the long term, this has not proved to be a successful way to run a life or a nation, as one will sooner or later meet up with someone with another point of view. There are many who believe that the American dream includes the establishment of American Christianity, whatever that means, noting the numerous discrepancies between the various sectarian dogmas, and establishing this not only within U.S. boundaries, but indeed worldwide. That is the Great Commission. There are many others who believe that the American dream is not only to believe in a higher power, if you will, and to be successful without trampling on somebody else, but also to avoid the establishment of any sect or religion, including Christianity. Unfortunately, many Christians would believe this attitude to be anti-America, and thus the saying prevalent in the 60s, America, love it or leave it. Such a simplistic statement demonstrates little awareness of the past and not much hope for the future. Perhaps the only ones who could make such a statement are the Native Americans, as the rest of us could be considered as foreigners imposing our will and way of life on the locals. In America, the exclusive cultic view held by many Christians could be expanded to include the impact of Christianity on the world at large. And again, while there has been and continues to be much that is positive, the Christian charity, the ethics, the sense of community, and much more, all laudable, we now know of the tremendous injustices that have also resulted from many Christians naively believing to have all the answers for all of humankind. Of course, it is the erroneous belief that Christianity and Jesus is the religious spiritual salvation for the entire world that has propagated this destructive attitude. And this illusion continues even today. Simply turn on the radio or television to a fundamentalist Christian broadcast to get your fill of Christian violence or meism, me against you. Or show an interest in other religions or, quote, God forbid, unquote, join one to witness Christian bigotry firsthand. Or one might attempt an experiment like John Howard Griffin did, recorded in his popular book, Black Like Me, to find out what it feels like to be on the receiving end of narrow-mindedness. Presently, in Sunday schools and Christian schools, a very distorted view of life is being programmed into young minds, a solely biblical view of life as exclusively accurate, a view that attempts more to exclude than include. Of course, when we are in our narrow minds, so to speak, we do not perceive to be excluding anyone. Knowing, quote unquote, all the answers, we feel that everyone can definitely be included as long as they hold to the correct view. Now, this is not to say that there are not exclusive and correct views in life. This religious exclusiveness is evident if one goes into a Christian bookstore where only books with a Judeo-Christian view are presented. If other religions are presented at all, they are simply mocked as inaccurate at best. For example, many in the Christian community criticize meditation and various other religious disciplines such as chanting and yoga, and certain dietary restrictions found in Hinduism and other Eastern faiths, as well as the similar soul experiences found in many religious traditions. This is ironic and telling, since Yeshua, later named Jesus, apparently spent much time in meditation. And the apostles Peter and Paul both give descriptive accounts of their trance states. Of course, to the exclusive Christian mind, these are valid experiences if they occur within the Christian tradition. If not, then such experiences are branded as witchcraft or devil worship. In this age, when the world again is becoming a much smaller place due to the ease of travel and instant communication, many caring individuals realize that there are many fine people, quote, out there, unquote. Such open-minded individuals are taking an interest in the customs and traditions of these others, not to convert them to their ways, but rather to enjoy and learn. Remember, it's one extreme to have a totally closed mind, but there's another extreme of being so open-minded that our brains fall out, if you will. There is a balance in the middle. In other words, there's a time to be liberal, there's a time to be conservative. It is these new pioneers coming from many cultures that realize that exclusive religious claims by any group have little to do with searching for religious spiritual truths, but everything to do with priestly and organizational power. Though that is, again, not to say that there cannot be exclusive aspects to any religion. Just as in life, becoming a PhD is a very exclusive thing. It doesn't mean that other people are excluded, but it means that you have to work up to that point of being included in a PhD program. One can imagine the violence in the world if the other great religions, Hinduism, Buddhism, Shinto, Taoism, Jainism, Sikhism, indigenous Indian religions, the Hawaiian religion, the Baha'i faith, the Aboriginals, and others, etc., believe that their scriptures and prophets were the only way, as the fundamental Christian and Muslims do. There'd be no end to the violence. Of course, these two, Christianity and Islam, are two of the youngest of the world's religions, and therefore, not to sound condescending, but a certain amount of this kind of attitude can be expected. And again, violence is not restricted to any one or two specific religions as, quote, people are people, unquote, in all cultures and religions. There's good Hindus, bad Hindus, good Christians, bad Christians, etc., etc. Witness the atrocities committed by the Tamils and Sinhalese in Sri Lanka, and these are two of the oldest cultures in the world. For many, it is precisely such exclusive religious claims that have driven many away, those who seek a mature religious spiritual viewpoint. This is an important point. Not only have many of these seekers sought positive religious spiritual alternatives, including adopting other religious traditions, but unfortunately many others have fallen into unwholesome lifestyles, having lost all direction and respect for anything with the hint of religion spirituality. Thus, Christianity's exclusive religious doctrine, or any religion's exclusive religious doctrine, ironically has been responsible for turning many away from developing the necessary religious spiritual qualities that make life enjoyable and fulfilling. Thus, in a sense, Christianity should first lose itself in order to ultimately find itself. Unfortunately, in Christian America, there are many who would in no way believe or accept these postulations. These hardliners instead would view all of America's problems as a direct result of a break with Christian tradition and advocate as the only solution a return to traditional values. Of course, we have seen the effects of some of these, quote, values, unquote, in the destruction of whole nations and cultures. Non-Christians termed heathens and pagans certainly do not wish to return to these values. At this point, many may wonder why it is so difficult for many Christians to get their act together, so to speak. One of the basic problems appears to lie in the Christian doctrine of belief by faith and not by works. This is ironic in that many Christians firmly believe in the work ethic and expend great energy in fulfilling their material requirements. However, when it comes to things religious, spiritual, this erroneous concept that one does not have to work at spiritual salvation has been responsible for much of the confused doctrine in the Christian faith. Gandhi, who had his own issues, stated this problem when he said, quote, "Because so many people are unwilling to undergo religious spiritual disciplines, there is so much untruth being delivered to a bewildered world," unquote. Religious spiritual realizations take great effort, as the lives of the various prophets have attested to. This fact is realized in the Eastern religions, Hinduism, Buddhism, Jain, Sikh, Taoism, Shinto, and thus the reason for so many, if you will, spiritually realized men and women, past and present. By inaccurately programming congregations to believe that all they have to do is utter a simple phrase and accept Jesus into their life, and presto, their names are written in the book of life, and they are saved, is, in the author's opinion, to perform a great disservice. This is the Western religious blindness. Religious spiritual disciplines, be they scriptural study, prayer, the singing of devotional songs, chanting, meditation, and so forth, prepare the soil, so to speak, in which spiritual realizations blossom. To be fair, many Christians are encouraged to spend more time on their spiritual life than watching football, for example, but obviously there's still a long way to go. Of course, there is always the tendency to become so involved and perhaps chained to one's religious spiritual practices that the goal of illumination, spiritual illumination, and the most important qualities of love and compassion are lost in the effort. This would seem to be the inherent meaning in stating that one is not saved by works alone. This kind of obsession with religious spiritual disciplines is often the Eastern blindness. However, this mindset can transcend any boundaries. Apparently, change is a very difficult thing for many of us to accept. Undoubtedly, something has happened in an individual's life to make them very fearful of change. Therefore, we should all exercise compassion and understanding. However, this is not to excuse the fact that religious rigidity is a very detrimental posture, one that could be considered ungodly as well. We could call this kind of rigidity, quote, straight line thinking, unquote. If we reflect for a moment on the nature of creation, we must conclude that there are few, if any, straight lines. Both sound and light come to us as energy waves, as well as the fragrances that waft into our olfactory senses. Our bodies, organs, tissues, and nerve structures are a mass of curvy lines. Even our convoluted brain looks like a mass of snake-like fissures. Indeed, all of nature seems to dance in a fluid, snake-like motion. This recognition of the fluid nature of life is why in many Oriental cultures, Asian cultures, the snake is a positive symbol of the way in which things move. Therefore, in the cultures of the East, the snake is generally not an object of contempt, but to the contrary, a symbol of the dance of the creative process. If you look in Hinduism, for example, we have Nag Devata, the snake deity, symbolizing this natural wave-like movement of nature. In Eastern art, one also finds few straight lines, the recognition of the way the creative energy moves, even the building construction. This movement naturally carries over into the thinking and the religious spiritual views, as well as an overall world view of the people. It is from the religious spiritual experience of one's own inner nature that a mindset first develops that views life as flexible, tolerant, and curvy, not inflexible, intolerant, and simply straight. Therefore, in such a mindset, there can be no one way, though there are ways. Don't confuse that. Life and religion are viewed as continually evolving circles of change and transition. With such a view, the world is known to be round, not flat, to be moving and not static. While other points of view, religions and religious spiritual aspirations, are seen as valid points on a continual circle of change. It is interesting to note that in the fluid traditions of Hinduism and other Eastern religions, dance, probably one of the most beautiful expressions of fluid creative energy, is highly esteemed. Contrast this with much of the straight line, exclusionary, and flat thinking that has permeated much of Christianity and necessarily Western society. With this kind of limited thinking, there is obviously only one way to do things, the right way. Dancing with life then becomes something sinful. Is it any wonder that the Christian missionaries banned hula dancing when they went to Hawaii? Of course, many flat thinkers immediately attack this all-inclusive approach, but considering the admirable ethical behavior followed by many who come from this more fluid mindset, the argument becomes null and void. Of course, again, in speaking about being inclusive, we are not speaking about a promiscuous and wild lifestyle. As we have seen, the ethical values taught by all the religions are almost identical. But it would seem that there has to be, at some point, a letting go to the creative process, with the assumption that there is an intelligence greater than most of us can comprehend. Actually, Einstein admitted the same fact. To be afraid of this leap of faith, which apparently frightens many Christians, for that would end their exclusive claims. To be afraid of this leap of faith is to imprison ourselves in a self-created illusion, a dream which has too often turned into a nightmare, especially for the others. Therefore, it is not surprising that when children of extremely stern parents, and especially with a religious overtone, turn out to be very unyielding themselves, or wild to the extreme, or perhaps seriously mentally and emotionally confused. But seldom do such children turn out to be loving and open to others, at least not to the others. Despite this apparent lack of what many would consider a religious spiritual maturity, we must recognize that many of Christianity's time-honored traditions, principles, and values are definitely praiseworthy. Again, we're not throwing out the baby with the bathwater, just changing the bathwater. The charity and the selfless service, the sense of community, worship of something greater than oneself, and many other virtues and common sense ethics have proved invaluable in greatly helping many through their various life struggles. The interconnection that many Christians feel for their Savior, Jesus, and the comfort derived from that relationship most certainly is valid and in some cases inspiring. But that relationship with a personal deity is not peculiar to Christianity. One has only to meet those of another religion and attend their services to realize that they achieve the same benefit from their encounters with the divine as they see it. Therefore, for Christianity, and thus America to a great degree, to remain in the grips of meism, claiming the exclusivity and superiority of Jesus, which is its foundation, thus Christianity, thus America, is to remain in the grips of an illusion, one which promotes violence, not peace. It is not only hard to be humble when you're number one, but actually impossible, considering that to be humble is to understand. Ironically, in attempting to be first, to be number one, many Christians and Americans are coming in last when their bigotry is uncovered. And even more confusing are the unanticipated firsts, i.e., first in arms sales, first in violent crime, divorce, teenage pregnancies, rapes, suicides, drug addictions. Throughout this book, we have tried to take an honest look at the motives behind certain missions undertaken by various individuals and groups. It has not always been a pretty picture. However, if we look at the larger picture and attempt to learn from our past mistakes, and we all make them, our past injustices, the greed, the religious bigotry, these mistakes could be a springboard that propels us into a new era, a new dawn of hope and inspiration for America, for the world. This dream is certainly well worth striving for. However, like the alcoholic who denies that he or she has a problem, America may not be able to progress very far in the vital areas of race relations and religious tolerance until there is at least some recognition of the mistakes of the past. Recognizing these mistakes is vital in order to prevent the continual recurrence of many of these same old problems. America is going through a very unsettling period. Remember, this is 1993, could be today, which will certainly provide the impetus for tremendous change, growth, and enlightenment, if you will. There will be those, however, that will wish to remain in the reassurance of their learned belief system. However, there may be many others who will look forward to possible solutions out of many of our self-created illusions, elusive dreams which have too often ended in nightmares. There are many possible solutions to help us to get over these bad dreams. We all must first recognize that we have all been programmed with some kind of a belief structure that is responsible in large part for our actions. Recognizing that our beliefs are greatly responsible for our actions and that religious beliefs are ingrained in many of us, often unconsciously. And also recognizing that in America, Christianity is the predominant religious belief system. How many people wish you Merry Christmas, say God bless you, with no concern at all to what is your religion? Christian leaders and congregations need to seriously evaluate the validity of much of their dogma. Throughout this book, we have seen where certain biblical passages were used by many to justify their actions. We have also seen how much of, quote, God's word, unquote, remember, all scripture is written by humans, how much of God's word has proven to be false or not applicable for the changing times. We have also become aware that, to the relief of many, that this God's word is really the invention of some men. Therefore, it is not the divine that is dead, but simply that much of our opinions about this something are, shall we say, lacking. And again, it is not that beliefs and ethics are not necessary. It is not that feelings for the creation and perhaps creative process are not highly beneficial to the individual as well as the society. It is not that the religions, scriptures, and holy men and women of the world should not be revered and respected. However, it is just that it would seem more than prudent to not accept some of these things blindly without thinking. Many Christians, as well as those of other religions, but please, one dream at a time, this kind of introspection is a fearful prospect. Most of us do not like to admit that we are wrong, especially it seems when it comes to religion. Perhaps there would be many others who would fear for their jobs if they began teaching that indeed there were other valid paths to God. However, this author believes that quite the contrary would take place. There seems to be nothing quite so appreciated and cleansing to everybody concerned as a sincere admission of guilt. This is humility. This is understanding. This is ultimately a sign of intelligence and love. To first recognize the wrong, to apologize, and attempt to rectify the misunderstanding. This opens the way for forgiveness, reconciliation, and healing. It would seem, then, that only when individuals, groups, and nations are able to come clean with the past and be willing to say the apparently difficult phrases, "I am sorry, I was wrong, please forgive me," that there can be any hope for a relatively peaceful America, a peaceful world. It would also seem wise for all of us, regardless of our beliefs, religious affiliations, or none at all, to ask ourselves some very basic questions, often overlooked in their simplicity. Who am I really? Where did I come from? Where am I going? What is the ultimate purpose of life? What are the purposes of life? The answers to these questions, controversial though they would be, perhaps hold a key to a relatively sane individual and sane society. For example, if individuals believe they are born in sin, will they fulfill that prophecy in their life? If individuals and societies believe that the ultimate purpose of life is to make as much money as possible, to what lengths will they go to procure that goal? On the other hand, if we believe that we came from a source of love, will we not live our lives accordingly? If we believe that the ultimate purpose of life is to get back to that love, realize it more and more, would we not strive for that mature goal? Let's conclude with a maxim from the East. If we think we know not. Therefore, the author must beg forgiveness and say, "I am sorry for assuming to know too much. But this is life. We try, we make mistakes, put our views in the marketplace of ideas, and the great drama goes on. The variety is really wonderful. It makes being alive fresh, new, and exciting. Therefore, why can't we all exist together and enjoy our differences as long as we don't hurt one another? Is that not, to many, what the American dream is supposed to be all about?" As simplistic as this seems, in the words of Rodney King and Reginald Denny, who suffered the brunt of centuries of misunderstandings, and lately Howard Floyd, why can't we all just get along? I can't breathe. Perhaps there are many that still feel that this work is meant to destroy Christianity. And if by Christianity they mean its exclusive place in the world to the exclusion of all other great faiths, which unfortunately is the authoritative position, then the answer is yes. For this is a form of violence that the world can well do without. It would seem to be not only an indication of wisdom, but also a sign of peace, compassion, and love for all people, regardless of religious faith or none, to conclude that all the religious spiritual names and forms, prophets and scriptures, are symbolic representations and realities to the respective believers that attempt to describe or emulate a common source, a source found, ironically, in all the religions of the world. Indeed, everywhere, an ultimate source of love, light, happiness. Things all religions speak of. If we look at the word religion as religio, or the attempt to link back to get ourselves together, to understand our body, mind, and emotion, this would seem to be a great impetus for peace and understanding. And again, this is the essential nature of religio, or the religious process. Therefore, anytime anyone is attempting to understand their self, their body, their mind, their emotions, and perhaps their soul or spirit, if you will, and others, they are being religious whether or not they belong to one of the specific religions of the world. However, if one is following established religious principles and traditions, to be honest, one must admit that is what they are following. Let each of us make our journey through life utilizing whatever positive aids are appropriate, all the while realizing that there are many paths with many other trekkers like us, but different. Thus, we would not merely have one nation under God, if you will, but one nation under peace and love and joy and happiness. One world in peace and joy and love and happiness. This is a dream worthy of any individual, group, or nation. And it is certainly one worthy to be the American dream. From G tossing and E tossing on White Light Cassette, Heart Song Records, 1985, quote, "All the world was built by dreamers, those who dream, and so it seems that this world was made for dreamin' if we just wake up and dream." So as a postscript, remember the American Dream, Waking Up, was written in 1993. And here we are in 2021, still some of the same old problems of violence and injustice, and religious bigotry, religious misunderstandings, if you will. So here's a little acronym that may help to put many things into perspective. The NAT syndrome, N-A-T. In other words, one's religion is not no way or always. That's the extreme universalist who will say that we don't really follow a way, but they're doing actually something very specific, like yoga, for example. So therefore, there is a fundamentalism in that universalism, that no way or always, which is basically to say the same thing. That's one extreme. The other understandable extreme, and it can go from one to the other, is the fundamentalist. And these are two extremes that it seems that we as human beings go through. We may start out in a very fundamentalist worldview, meaning our religion is the only one and every other one is wrong at best or outright evil. Then we may wake up to that extreme and swing over to the other extreme and adopt some principles which are generally coming from an already established religion like today's yoga and make that universal. Or any religion that claims to be universal, in a sense absorbing every other religion into it. That's also an extreme. But could there be a third alternative, a middle ground? Could we view our religious spiritual tradition as a way, not the way, and not no way or always? So understanding this NAT principle may help us as we move through what seems to be inevitable and necessary life learning processes, as we perhaps come from a very universalist mindset, like in the 60s and 70s and today's spurious yoga movement. And many flip over into the fundamentalism of becoming born-again Christians, or vice versa. Many are born into a very exclusive one-way religious mindset, and then they switch over into the universalist no way or always mindset. This seems to be a natural swing of a learning curve, till perhaps we end up in the middle, a balance. And notice the image of a teeter-totter. In order to balance, in other words, not have either end fall to the ground, we must work our way to the middle. And having stood in the middle, we have 1 foot towards one side, 1 foot towards the other. So all three are actually very necessary in this life journey. So this NAT principle may help many to realize that their religious spiritual tradition is a way. It's not the way, and it's not no way or a universal way. It's not for everybody. It's for those who choose it. The NAT principle, N-A-T. So it's been a true joy to try to present to you this work, The American Dream, Waking Up, and in a hope that we all realize our humanity and our inner qualities that we all have of love and light and energy, and put them all to good use. And if you'd like to listen to some more of our philosophical discourses, you can listen to our other podcasts, and certainly if you're interested in the Hindu Yoga Dharma, or Hinduism, the Hindu religion, we have obviously numerous podcasts on the Hindu Yoga Dharma. So blessings to all of you. Thank you for joining. And imagine, dream, create, relax. Have a great day.